Hello Year 9 and welcome to another English lesson. This lesson is following on from the lesson that you did previously this week on Monday, where you were looking at an article on the death of George Floyd and the following protests. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at protests, rioting, and you are going to be writing an argumentative article. Okay, this lesson should be done with the PowerPoint attached to Show My Homework open so that you can have a look through the work that we are doing there. And you should have a pen and something to write on because you're going to be doing some writing today. Okay, so just to start us off, riots are a form of violence that are carried out by large crowds often in protest at an idea, an event, or a political system. I would like you to think of any examples that you can of any rioting. When did these riots happen? Do you think it was right or wrong for these people to riot? Pause the video and write those notes down now. Your title for this lesson is Writing to Argue. Do that now, please. Okay, so you should have now an answer to these questions. Examples of rioting, well, Bristol, in particular, those of you that are from Bristol, has a particular history of protest and riot. What we're going to be thinking about today is rioting a right thing to do, wrong thing to do, and we're going to be exploring the issues surrounding that. Hopefully you're going to be describing different perspectives on rioting. You're going to be explaining how we can use specific language techniques in order to write argument pieces, and hopefully some of you are going to evaluate how these techniques are used in an example writing to argue article. Okay, so just a little bit of background, as if you didn't know, in 2020, this year, peaceful protests and riots took place across London and Bristol. Okay, they were initially in response to the death of George Floyd, a black man from Minneapolis, on May 25th of this year. He was killed by police after they tried to arrest him. The police officer knelt on Floyd's neck for over 8 minutes while Floyd was calling, "Officer, I can't breathe." This incident sparked a wave. Oh, there's a typo there. Bear with me 1 second while I change my typo. Sparked. There we are, always looking for correcting spelling mistakes. This incident sparked a wave of protests and rioting across the US and the world. In Bristol, the protest resulted in the tearing down of the statue of slave trader William Colston. There's a video attached to this slide on the PowerPoint. I'd like you to click on the YouTube link for that video now, please. Watch it. It'll give you a little bit of background around the protests and the riots that took place in Britain. This focus is on the ones in Britain. And just as you're watching this video, I would like you to think about this discussion topic. Was the rioting justified in this case? If so, why? If not, why not? This is a thinking task, so as you're watching the YouTube clip that gives you information about these protests, think, was it justified in this case? Why or why not? Pause the video and do that now, please. Okay, we should be ready to move on. Okay, so rioting, and we're taking the idea of rioting away from peaceful protest. Okay, rioting is a lot more violent. It involves destruction of property, violence maybe against police that are trying to stop it, that kind of thing. Rioting is a complex topic and will provoke for and against arguments. Okay, I would like you now to write down a table with as many of ideas as you can think of for it being the right thing to do, or it is always wrong, and use this table that you've got in front of you as a guide for that. For some extra challenge, you can complete the table and include relevant examples for both sides of the argument. Okay, and then the mega challenge, when you finish your table, highlight the 3 best arguments in your table and explain why you chose them. Pause this video and do that now, please. Okay, so we're going to use what you've just done to help us write an argumentative article. Okay, we're going to look at some techniques that we can use, and we're going to start to think about how we might be able to use those techniques in an article that you are going to write. Okay, and there's some tasks here. You need to match up the writing to argue techniques to their definitions and examples. Some extra challenge: you can choose 3 techniques and make up your own examples, or to really challenge yourself, which of these techniques is most effective for writing to argue pieces, and explain why, providing examples. So here we go. We've got a series of techniques here. We've got their definitions in the middle and examples down the right hand side of the screen. So a counter argument is one of the techniques, and all of the rest of the techniques are there. What I would like you to do is I would like you to write down each of the techniques and then match them up with each of these definitions and an example. Do that now, please. You can pause the video while you do it. Right, so a counter-argument is showing awareness of others' ideas and showing why they are not true. And an example of that is, although some may say it is their fault, this is often not the case. Emotive language is showing passion and emotion when you're writing. And an example of this is, we cannot abandon people who feel isolated, alone, and unrepresented. Statistics is using numbers and figures to back up our argument. And an example of this is 15% of people lose their jobs due to businesses going bust. Examples is providing evidence through individual cases or effects. An example of this is, Brian is struggling after losing his business during a riot. So you can see that's an example of that. Rhetorical questions are questions with no expected answer. And an example of this is, how can we allow this to happen? Short sentences are to-the-point sentences that make a strong impact, and this has to stop is an example of that. And finally, repetition is repeating words for emphasis and making a point. And the example here is, inequality is wrong, greed is wrong, we must end this wrong. Okay, so you've got a series of techniques here, what they mean, and examples of them. All right. We're going to read an example of writing to argue. Okay. What I would like you to do is follow these tasks on the screen now. You don't have to do all of them. You can just pick and choose which tasks of these, either the challenge, the extra challenge, or the mega challenge task. Okay. I would like you to stop this video, read the magazine article. Okay, it's on a document that's attached to the Show My Homework, so you can read it from there. You can print it off if you like, or you can save it to your computer. You can do some annotations, things like that. Okay. So you need to either find and label all the writing to argue techniques being used in this article, or which parts of the article are effective in terms of engaging the audience with its argument, why, refer to specific quotes and techniques. And the mega challenge is, look at how the writer has ordered or structured their ideas, how have they done this, and why is it effective, refer to specific quotes and techniques. So pause this video, read through the article, and do one of those tasks, please. Okay, so you should have done that by now, so we're going to move on. Here's the article you can see, but I'm going to break it down into different sections and talk about why the techniques are effective that the writer has used. So we can see this line here. Writing provides public opinion, divides public opinion, but it gets the public talking. That is what makes it such a powerful form of protest. So you can see here that this beginning of the article is blunt, it's to the point, and answers the statement posed in the task straight away, and it engages the audience with the writer's argument. That is something that's very, very key. Okay, an argument that they will go on and talk further about in the rest of the article. So you can see that in this opening line, it really gives the writer's opinion and their argument straight away. Okay, we've got this. Critics of riots will claim that it does nothing but create further violence that often ends in mindless destruction and looting that harms innocent business owners. Now here we've got the writer including others' perspectives. This is that counter argument that I was talking about earlier. Here the writer is explaining how others think rioting is nothing more than mindless violence and looting. Writers will do this in an argument to provide a counter argument and weaken those opposing views. And it's a very good argumentative tool to use. I know that you feel this way, however, blah, 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 blah. Okay. We can see already just by looking at this, we've got use of facts and statistics. 50% of London's wealth is owned by the top 10%. The bottom 50% own only 5% of London's wealth, and 27% of Londoners live below the poverty line. Often in writing to argue pieces, writers will include facts and statistics to strengthen their arguments. In this example, the writer uses statistics about London poverty to argue why Londoners may have taken to rioting in 2011 as a form of protest. Okay, we've got this line. Whilst riots can hurt innocent people, they only occur when the most desperate people in society can no longer tolerate what they see as injustice anymore. Okay, we've got another perspective included, but the writer is able to use this to argue why rioting can be seen as a legitimate form of protest and response to the task. Okay, and finally, we've got why else would normal people just like you and me, turn to such violence? So we've got here use of rhetorical question right at the end. And a rhetorical question is a type of question that doesn't need an answer. In this case, the writer is asking the audience why normal people would turn to violence. Okay, the answer being because of desperation, as they've already explained. And it actually if you use a rhetorical question right at the end of your article, it leaves your reader with something to think about. You're not going to change their mind straight away, but if you leave them thinking, you might be able to change their mind. And another tool that is being used here, or technique that's being used here, is that direct address you. Why else would normal people just like you and me? So that makes it very personal, and it confronts the audience about their own views. Okay, so that's a series of different techniques that's used in this article. To really good effect. Okay, what you're going to be doing is working on your writing to argue language techniques now. Okay, I would like you to think of a writing to argue piece that you could create for your own magazine. Here are some examples. You could use one of those examples, or you could use this example. I'm just going to put this example in now. Okay, rioting is never unjustified. There is always a case for it. Okay, there you go. So I've added that in to the task as well, and I'll check that spelling. Wonderful. Okay, so we've got some examples. VAR is an abysmal failure in football. It's shocking that 16 and 15 and 17-year-olds cannot vote. There's no longer a place for uniform in schools. Rioting is never unjustified. There's always a case for it. Okay, I would like you to, and I would like to see some of you, if not most of you, writing about what has been happening in the news lately. It might be about lockdown and coronavirus. It might be about rioting, or it might be about the death of George Floyd. You decide. This is the whole point. I want you to decide the argument that you're going to make. Okay, once you've decided on this, choose up to 5 language techniques and create your own examples that you could include in your article. Okay, and then I want you to write your article. It doesn't have to be as long as the one that we looked at. I'd say 4 or 5 paragraphs would be absolutely fine. Good luck with this year 9. Hopefully you will be able to vent your opinions and your passions in this piece of writing. off you go. That's all from me. You will hear from me in our next lesson together. All the best.